Colossus is the most advanced lineup optimizer in daily fantasy sports. Lock and exclude players. Adjust player exposure to reduce risk of injury or poor performance. Customize individual projections or upload your own projections. Generate hundreds of optimal lineups in seconds. Name and save the best lineups. Create winning lineups for the top sites like DraftKings and FanDuel for free at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Hello and welcome to the FanDuel Punch-Out. I'm BigItaly42. He is Spencer Limbach at Spencer_JL. Talking about tonight's action, of course, and we've got a pretty big slate, of course, with it being Friday. But, I mean, it's a pretty easy night right now, right? You just play Carlos Gonzalez, and then everything else just kind of happens how it happens, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's not even that much of a joke either, because you can just plug him in. He can be your building block and just work around him right now because he's absolutely on fire. Another solid matchup against Chris Heston. So, yeah, I mean, Cargo, he's the most expensive outfielder, but I have no problem just plugging him in and then working your value accordingly.
Yeah, that's absolutely my thought too. But I guess we'll start at starting pitcher because most people do. So, top option for me is going to be Jacob deGrom, $11,800 facing off against Miami. Obviously had that hiccup 2 games ago against Philly, but seems like all the elite pitchers can't seem to pitch against Philly, so I'm not sure what that's all about. But either way, deGrom, been incredibly consistent outside of that one game, pitching 6, 7, 8 innings seemingly every start. Miami, obviously a terrible offense. He's a -180 favorite, 7-run totals among the lowest on the night. So, I mean, I think he's going to be your chalk play in cash games tonight.
Yeah, I really like him. It really comes down to lineup configuration if you can fit him in, because that 11.8K is pretty bulky if you are trying to get Cargo in and maybe a few other bats from this San Francisco-Colorado game. So yeah, that's basically what you're working with tonight. I also love deGrom. It's hard not to. Pitcher-friendly ballpark there in Miami, and also a bottom 5 offense there with the Marlins. So yeah, I think he is the top overall play. Corey Kluber would be the pivot off of that. Maybe a little more strikeout upside. Not saying deGrom doesn't have that, but Kluber definitely elite in that regard. Facing Detroit, who is boomer bust pretty much. They're kind of like the Astros in that regard, where they hit home runs or they strike out. So if Kluber gets it going, he could definitely put up a high upside performance.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Yordan Ventura get 11 Ks against these guys the other day, and obviously Kluber much more dominant of a pitcher. So I'm with you there. I think he's a great option. And then as you're looking at middle options, Luis Severino stands out to me at 7,200. He's been the guy who's been very consistent, especially over his last 3 starts, 6 innings in each one. You don't like these walking too many guys. He does have 10 walks over those 3 games, but also 20 strikeouts. So at $7,200, you expect him to get the win here. He's a -155 favorite, 8-run total. And Tampa Bay is a team that does not hit right-handed pitching very well. So you like to think, especially if he can keep those walks down, maybe he can go deeper. But you're plenty happy with a 6 strikeout, 6-inning, 2-3-run type of performance here if he gets the win.
Yeah, I like Severino as well. As we said, Tampa, they really don't have those left-handed bats to give him home run fits. That is, they don't have any high-profile sluggers like that. So I think Severino's pretty safe tonight, despite it being in Yankee Stadium. Otherwise, a few other guys I do like. Looking up a little bit at 9K, we have Colin McHugh at home against the Twins. As we know, the Twins are strikeout happy, and they hit a lot better at home. So Colin McHugh has that slider working right now, 7+ strikeouts in 3 of the last 4. I think he's a pretty solid pick if you're pivoting off the top range guys, but still want someone with a little bit of lineup security. He struggles more against left-handed hitters and the Twins. Aside from Eduardo Escobar, if he can pitch around that future Hall of Famer there, he should have a pretty solid outing. I'm expecting another 7+ strikeout performance, and he's a -180 favorite. So definitely giving McHugh a look tonight. Otherwise, another cheap guy. I feel very strange saying this, but Joe Kelly, 6.6K. He's picked up a win in 6 straight games. Yep. Some pretty solid performances. He's a reasonable favorite again tonight. It is in Boston. That's a hitter-friendly park. He's playing a sneaky good Philadelphia offense. Good as of late, we should say. So yeah, there's definitely risk in the equation. despite an apparently good matchup. But yeah, if you're building several tournament teams, you need to make a stack. You need a cheap pitcher. I'd throw Kelly in a couple of those lineups.
Yeah, I mean, he's a sizable favorite, like you mentioned. He's been good. I mean, he's not a guy with a ton of upside, but at that price tag, if he gets the win and gives you a quality start, I mean, you're thrilled with that. So
Yep.
I'm with you there. Definitely not a guy without risk, but definitely a guy you got to consider because you are going to want some of these big bats tonight. As far as other cheap guys, really nobody that stands out. I think the most talented of the bunch is Tanner Roark, but you can't imagine being stretched out from the bullpen that he's going to be throwing a lot of pitches. So that's going to go ahead and rule him out for me.
Yep.
All right, moving on here to catcher, where John Jaso is going to be your chalk play, I would imagine. Once again, down there at $2,200, whether he's batting first, fourth, whatever it may be, against Severino. I know we just talked about Severino, but if there's one left-handed bat you're looking to play from this lineup, it's really going to be John Jaso. And if not, I mean, if you want to pay twice his price tag for the guy in a great spot who was a disappointment last night, Buster Posey sits up top there at Coors Field against a lefty, and Jorge De La Rosa, where maybe you see lower ownership on him tonight in tournaments because he did let everyone down last night, but he's still in an incredible spot tonight.
Right. I think Jaso's probably the guy, and then you're just picking your Coors bats at other positions. And with Jaso, it's not necessarily as much about the matchup as it is just a great increase in park factor. He's batting cleanup for the Rays, and he's minimum salary, and there's really aren't many other cheap catchers that really catch your eye. So I think Jaso really stands out in that regard. If you need a tournament pivot, a guy that's a little more expensive, I'm looking at Yan Gomes. He's a guy who's swinging the bat pretty well. Had that 2-homer game a few days ago. He's at Detroit against Lobstein, who is a lefty. We know this guy hits lefties a lot better than righties. So tournament pick, 2.6K Yan Gomes. I really don't hate it.
Yeah, and Lobstein's gotten hit hard by righties this year when he has been in the majors, 350 WOBA. So I'm with you there. Gomes, I think, one of my favorite plays. And then another guy you can consider, this is more of a tournament play, and he has a terrible lineup spot, bats at the bottom, but a guy that's been hitting really well, Blake Swihart. You don't want to pay $3,300 for him, but, I mean, this guy's been mashing the ball, and no one plays him because he bats 8 or 9, but in a good matchup against Adam Morgan, who's been awful this season, switch hitting Blake Swihart is one of my favorite swerves there.
Yeah, I actually have him written down here, and for the exact same reasons. He's a switch hitter also, so if Adam Morgan gets pulled, the Philadelphia lefty, then you don't lose that platoon advantage, and I don't think a lot of people will want to pay 3.3K for him. So yeah, great tournament pick.
Yep, absolutely. And then he's got Jackie Bradley, Mookie Betts batting behind him, so that's not too bad either.
Oh, there's security. Yeah.
There you go. First base options. I mean, I don't want to have to be the one to say it, but I'll say it. Joey Votto has got to be your top option at the top at $5,000. Finally priced up to his recent production. I mean, the guy's just killing the ball. He's in the midst of a crazy good stretch, reaching base multiple times every game, seemingly hitting home runs. So if you're paying up, I think that's the way to go. But for me, more often than not, if I'm paying for bats tonight, they're probably going to be bats in Coors Field. But I do think the Joey Votto, if you're paying up at first, has got to be the best option.
Yeah, and then if you're looking in the mid-range, here's a question I have for you. Do you go back to Ben Paulson? Because I've been playing him recently because he's reasonably priced in Coors Field, but he's just been so disappointing in this home stretch over the past 5 games. Do you think he warrants attention at 3.3K, or are you looking elsewhere?
No, I think he definitely still warrants attention. I mean, Chris Heston has had big struggles with lefties, like we kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, and it's his first start back in the majors, so, I mean, that's unfortunate for him that it's going to be in Coors Field. So Ben Paulson's one of those guys I always say I don't think he's a great baseball player, but when he's a good value at Coors Field in a good matchup, I mean, it's kind of hard to overlook him in your cash games, but I think he's a fine fade in tournaments just because he'll probably still be pretty high owned because right around that price, I mean, you get a guy barely 3K at Coors Field, got to imagine they're going to be pretty chalky.
Okay, for cash games, would you rather go Albert Pujols against Perez, the lefty, at home for 3.5K?
Yes.
Okay.
I would. I mean,
yeah, I was kind of debating between those two. Price is pretty similar, but I think, yeah, Pujols, overall the better player in a pretty respectable matchup. Most of the time, when it comes down to that, I usually just side with the better player, and that's Pujols in this case.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. And then other options, you can look at Greg Bird, $3,000. We know he's got big power. He's not much of a cash game play.
Say it.
What?
Say it. What's the word?
The bird is the word. The bird is definitely the word at 3K. I mean, I'll be playing him because there are a lot of options between 3 and 4K today. So I think that Greg Bird, obviously, it doesn't even look like Mark Teixeira is probably going to play again this season, or at least regular season. So he's locked in there, and I mean that's a good price for a guy who's got a ton of power, and especially at Yankee Stadium in that short porch.
Yeah, and then I know you have another guy at 2.5K, and I don't want to steal him from you, so I'll let you go ahead and outline one of your favorite players in MLB.
The barbecue sauce maker, Billy Butler.
Yes.
I have not tried the barbecue sauce yet, but I'm gonna have to get some. But
We're gonna make it happen. Hey, that should be part of our story for another day special. Is you sampling Billy Butler's barbecue sauce.
And we got to get all those wines, the Clay Buchholz and John Lester wines.
And put them together. I feel like that'd be a terrible combination: the barbecue sauce with ribs and Clay Buchholz wine. Like,
horrible combination. We would definitely be getting sick the next day, but we'll have to do that on a weekend where we actually get a day off afterward. Maybe.
Okay,
yeah, definitely add that to the list. But either way, Billy Butler hits lefties hard. It's a young lefty and almost. And so, I mean, if you need a value play, there's really nothing else even close to here that I feel decent about. And I'll side with Billy Butler on this one if I'm going cheap.
Yep.
All right, second base options. I'll let you go first on this one. Who's your favorite at second base today?
That's actually a really good question because it's kind of difficult out there. I think second base is one of those positions where you kind of round back to see what you have left over and then decide from there because you feel pretty confident Brandon Phillips. He's swinging a hot bat lately against Matt Garza, who's just been, I mean, I'm going to say he's been garbage this year. Not really anything to play for there. Phillips, top of that order. Nice little hitting streak going. Great lineup security with Votto and those guys behind him. 3.1K. I don't know if you have that much left in the bank after getting your Colorado bats in there, but if you do, great cash game pick there. Otherwise, a kind of sneaky pick that I like more because there's not much opportunity cost down there in the value department at second base is Jonathan Scope of Baltimore. Hutchison has been pretty bad against righties this season, 370 WOBA, and Scope has the necessary power to really take advantage of that park factor there in Toronto. So 2.5K, even though he's in the bottom half of that Baltimore order, nice upside, and that's what you're looking for in a value play, really.
Yeah, I really like that. And then a couple other guys that I've got here, Kelby Tomlinson, just because he's fairly cheap and in Coors Field. Not a guy with a ton of upside, but he's like the DJ LeMahieu of the Giants at this point, 3,400.
Yeah. That's a great comparison, actually.
Yeah, so I mean, if he comes up with some guys on, maybe he gets some RBI chances. You don't mind that. And then another guy who's been hitting well, Anthony Rendon. Julio Teheran is actually very good against righties and very good at home, but I'm going to side with Rendon here because I'm still not a believer in Teheran. I feel like he pitches above his head more often than not, and Washington offense finally starting to get it going. Like they look pretty good right now, so I'll be targeting him. And a guy that I usually love as a punt play, but I won't be playing him at 3K is Stephen Drew. Ton of upside, but that price tag is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's maybe on a different site where he's still around minimum salary. You can give him a look there, but yeah, not on FanDuel.
Nope, not at all. All right, third base options. Nolan Arenado, and I see other names, but they all just look like Nolan Arenado here.
Well, I see another guy from the same game that I kind of like, even though he hasn't been doing much lately. The Duff Man, Matt Duffy. He's sitting there at 3K. That price point is really, really good. But, I mean, you look at the game log, and he's kind of going through a little bit of a slump. So it's just kind of a back and forth whether you bite the bullet with him, a guy who's not swinging the bat well, but he's in a solid matchup. Otherwise, obviously, get Nolan Arenado if you can. He's just on fire right now. 4 straight games with a home run. He and Cargo are just a sweet 1-2 punch for fantasy. Try and work him in if you can, and then sacrifice value elsewhere would be my way of attacking this FanDuel slate tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another guy I really like his price tag on is Manny Machado at $3,600.
Yes.
Drew Hutchison has been really good at home somehow, but he's had some reverse
Doesn't make any
splits.
sense.
Yeah, and Manny Machado has also been very good at righty-righty. $3,600 just seems way, way too cheap for him. So probably for me, if I'm not able to afford Arenado, Machado's probably the guy I'm going with.
And he's kind of coming around too. I mean, he had that cold streak that kind of bumped down his price point, but 5 hits in the past 3 games. He's really starting to get it going again. So yeah, I like that.
Absolutely. And then moving over here to shortstop. Obviously, we've got some options that everyone knows all about. Troy Tulowitzki in a righty-righty matchup against Ubaldo Jimenez at home. Tulo still just hasn't been great. He's been pretty good recently, but not Tulo good. So his price still creeping down a little bit at 3,700. Not bad there, but I think if I'm going to be paying elite price tag, I'm still going to go Carlos Correa against Mike Pelfrey.
Yeah, I do like both of those options, especially Correa. He has that stolen base upside as well. But then a little bit cheaper than that, but still kind of in the mid-range, Xander Bogaerts against a lefty tonight. Looks pretty good. 5 hits the past 2 games. He actually hit a homer last night, which you don't expect, but it's a nice little surprise there.
I had to do a double take on that one. I was like, Bogaerts?
Yeah,
No,
I had to make sure I clicked on the right guy. I like, wait.
Yeah.
No? Oh, yeah, okay. But yeah, so Bogart's there, 3.2K. Don't really mind that. Otherwise, I mean, I'm really tired of saying this name. Like, I almost don't want to say it. But Alcides Escobar is minimum salary, batting leadoff against John Danks. So I guess if you had to get a pump play at minimum salary shortstop, it's Alcides Escobar, even though he hasn't been very good.
Yep. He gave us a day off from him yesterday because he didn't actually play, so that was nice.
Yep.
That was nice of him to spare us. But one other guy I'll throw out there, Eugenio Suarez at $3,000 against Garza, who's just been awful. He got shelled last time out, and Suarez has just been mashing the ball. So I like him at 3K, especially if he's in the heart of the order.
I got one more guy.
Go for it.
Johnny Peralta against lefty J.A. Happ. 2.4K, 6 hits in the past 3 games. Really starting to come back. He has more power than guys in this range, so I would give him the tiebreaker in that regard, other than a guy like Alcides Escobar, who I'm not too enthusiastic about.
Yeah, who just doesn't have a whole lot of upside. So I'm with you there. Peralta, and he has actually been hitting recently, unlike what he was doing there while everyone was playing him every single night. So definitely some cheap upside there. All right, outfield, Carlos Gonzalez. Play Carlos Gonzalez, and then figure out what you're doing through next 2 spots. I think affordable-wise, my number 2 option is going to be Lorenzo Cain, like he was last night. Ridiculously great game. Now he gets maybe even a better matchup, coming off 2 huge games in a row. I mean, you can go with him, or you can even go with his teammate, Ben Zobrist, who's mashing lefties as well. Both those guys, 3,800. I slightly prefer Cain because he's got more stolen base upside as well, but I don't think you can go wrong with either guy.
Yeah, and then looking down a little bit cheaper, I like, I'm going to screw up his name. Mark Canha.
Canha, yeah.
Is it Canha?
Yep.
That's right the first time. Okay, so yeah, he has a lefty tonight, and this is another guy who's just crushing lefties as of late. His production's a little more spotty than you like, so you can consider him tournament play in that regard for 3.1K, but definitely has that upside for a tournament stack. So I like him. Otherwise, looking down a little bit cheaper, you can look at Ryan Rayburn, but I think he might be a little too expensive for what you're getting in him and some limited upside. So I know you have one cheap guy that you really like, so if you want to enlighten us and tell us who your sneaky cheap play is tonight.
I'm going with Darnell Sweeney. He's been batting leadoff for the Phillies. You mentioned how they've been sneaky good. And, I mean, he's been producing. Last 2 starts, he's got 3 hits. One was a homer, one was a double. This time he started... Actually, each of his last 3 starts, he has at least 1 extra base hit. So I'm assuming he's batting on top of that order. It's against Joe Kelly, who, has just kind of pitched above his means, I guess you could say, recently, because we know he's not that good of a pitcher. He's a guy that struggles, gives up a ton of hard contact. So Sweeney, all he needs to do is get on base, and you got to imagine that hot offense will bring him home, right? Is that how it works?
Well, I don't know if that's exactly how it works, but I mean, I love the price point, love the batting order, and you don't hate the matchup and park factor for that matter. So there really isn't anyone else at minimum salary outfield that I'm too enthusiastic about. So he's a very fine complement to getting Cargo in there and Lorenzo Cain. You're going to need a cheap guy, and I think he presents more upside than most of the options down there. So otherwise, some other mid-range picks you can look towards. You have Adam Jones at 3K in the Rogers Center tonight. As we said, Hutchison has been bad against righties this season, so I think that's more of a risk-reward play, not necessarily a must-play cash game option. Otherwise, you also have Carlos Gomez, 2.9K. He's kind of starting to come back around. He has a nice little hitting streak going. 8 straight games after he had that pretty horrible cold stretch that was mostly attributed to an injury, but he has Mike Pelfrey tonight, who hasn't been very good over the second half of the year, and it was a lot worse away from home. So Gomez, home run, stolen base upside, 2.9K. He's one of my favorite mid-range picks.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good call. And then one other guy in the mid-range, if he's in, he's been hitting lefties better than righties, but Franklin Gutierrez has just been on an absolute tear, crushing the ball recently. So 3,900, going to be really low owned, especially sitting right above Ben Zobrist, Lorenzo Cain, guys like that. So I like him in tournaments. And then, of course, I got to mention Marlon Byrd against a lefty at Coors Field. Was hot when he first came over to the Giants, has struggled over his past 2 games, but I'm not buying into that too much. De La Rosa gives up a lot of home runs, and I would not be surprised to see Marlon Byrd join Carlos Gonzalez in finding the seats tonight.
So, do you have to say it again? Is that how this works?
All the birds. All the birds are the word today. Every single one of them.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, the birds are the word. That's the theme of the day.
Yep.
All right, that's going to wrap things up for us. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.